Now it's time for Calling All Horror Hounds. Now, I'm sure I don't need to tell all the rest of you horror hounds this, but for the rest of you, for me personally, and I think for a lot of horror fans of my generation who kind of came of age in the 90s, there was no greater influence on my appreciation of horror than one Mr. Joe Bob Briggs, the original drive-in movie critic. And when I was growing up, he had a weekly show on TNT called Monster Vision, where he would show 2, sometimes even 3 horror movies over the course of the night. And it was a place that, even though they were edited for TV, introduced me to a lot of horror pictures and stars and directors. And then through that, tracking down Joe Bob's old books, like Joe Bob Goes to the Drive-In, and then, finding out about some of the great hardcore horror pictures, and, really getting to where I am today with my affection of horror, especially horror from the 1980s. Well, Joe Bob is back. One of them online streaming services, Shudder, has given Joe Bob his own show again, and he recently did a big horror movie marathon, and it was, listen, whenever somebody comes back after 20 years off the air, it can be dicey, right? You sometimes end up with something that's stale and unfunny. You sometimes end up with something that's weird and controversial, and sometimes you end up with something that is truly amazing and that really is modern, but shows that the talent behind it hasn't missed a step. And that's thankfully the case with Joe Bob. And in this recent horror movie marathon, Joe Bob gave me the opportunity to watch a movie I haven't seen in a number of years, a movie that he calls maybe the best horror movie of the 80s, and it's difficult to argue with him, and that is Hellraiser. If you are a horror movie and you have never gotten around to seeing Hellraiser, it's about time to do it. This is the one that introduces the great Pinhead to the horror movie monster pantheon. And what can you say about this movie? This is a movie where a dude finds a puzzle box, and when he opens it, he gets sucked into a hell dimension wherein a group of ex-angels who have decided to go in, really buy into, I'm trying to think of what I can say on a family television show, who have really decided to buy into sadomasochism, torture him for a long time. Then he escapes, comes back to life in the attic of his old house, has no skin. It's a really cool effect. And his former girlfriend, played by Claire Higgins, and played to perfection. This is a terrific performance, as she plays a very complicated and layered character who is married to Andrew Robinson, who nerds like me know as Garrick from Deep Space Nine. She has never really liked Andrew Robinson, had formerly been having an affair with the guy with no skin, who it turns out is Andrew Robinson's brother, loves this guy so much that she gets to the point where she's willing to kill for him, because the more people she kills, the closer no-skin guy can come to coming back to life. Meanwhile, Andrew Robinson's daughter is twigging to something weird going on. She gets in touch with Pinhead and the rest of his pals, they're called the Cenobites, and leads them back to the house where they can get back the guy who escaped from them. This is a super imaginative movie, wholly original. It's from the mind of horror author Clive Barker, one of the few movies he actually directed based on his own material. But it creates this wholly original monster myth, which is, I think, something that we have had hundreds of years of horror at this point, more than 100 years of horror movies, and those horror movies tend to build on the same couple of archetypes, right? They tend to be some version of a Frankenstein movie or some version of a Dracula movie. In the late 1950s, early 1960s, George Romero invents the modern zombie, and then that becomes kind of the third thing. And it's exciting to see creatures like the Cenobites, who are neither fish nor fowl, that are really their own thing. This is a wonderfully shot, very evocative movie. It doesn't have a lot of likable characters in it, but does have a lot of complex characters in it, which is really fun to see. Hellraiser, 4.5 stars. And don't forget to visit our website, northmetrotv.com/everymovieever. There, you can watch reviews of every movie we've ever covered here on the show, as well as complete episodes. That's northmetrotv.com/everymovieever.